Hello and welcome to the Chaos to Clarity podcast, where we hear from incredibly successful and inspirational technology executives and thought leaders about escaping the chaos of building a tech startup and the hard-won lessons of getting to scale. I'm Eric Weiss, a 20-year software industry veteran, an executive coach, and the CEO of the Chaos to Clarity Accelerator. In this show, you will hear about the journey that founders must take to build a successful technology company, but I'll also share my own experience and methods as a leader, a founder, and an executive coach. Let's jump right into it. So one of the biggest traps that startup founders fall into is the idea that if we build it, they will come. And this is the premise that we as founders have some great idea, some strongly held belief and vision of the future, and we're going to go build it and the market is going to love it. Our customers are going to welcome us with open arms. They're going to use it. It's going to be incredible. And then VCs are going to be banging on our door to give us money. Now, of course, when we think about it that way, of course, we know that that's not true, but so many founders fall into this trap anyway. And there's good reasons for it. Mainly because time is of the essence and cash is running out and we have so little to work with that we have to get it right? And we have to be incredibly fast and efficient in building the MVP. And so that's really the focus, of so many startup founders. It's, I have an idea, I just need to build it and get it out there as quickly as possible to try to get some customers, raise some money and move on. And then, all those nagging problems we'll figure out a little ways down the road. But this causes a lot of issues, right? So number one is you might not really understand the problem you're solving. You might not really understand your customers and what they care about. You might not really understand all the different solutions out there and what's good about them and what's missing about them. You might not understand how to communicate what's valuable about your solution. You might not understand how you stack up against the competitors, right? So there's all these different ways in which if you just blindly move ahead and build a solution, even if it's a good one, it still may not create a viable business and a viable startup. And what ends up happening is we waste a ton of time and energy burning resources, building something that doesn't quite fit in the market, right? Or we build something even that's really great, but we don't really understand how to take it to market. Or we don't really understand our identity and how we stand up in the marketplace and have our competitive advantages and win the game. So what we need to do instead is, instead of focusing on building the MVP, we need to focus on building the feedback engine, the mechanism by which we can get potential customers to give us their time, give us feedback, and test and validate all of our beliefs, assumptions, and opinions. So the first kind of principle that I like to impress on early stage startup founders is no opinion means a damn thing if it hasn't been backed up by evidence. So you can come in here and climb up on a soapbox and talk all day about how your idea is so incredible and how your product is going to change the world. But unless you have real substantial evidence to support that, it's just an idea, right? It's a hypothesis. And so I try to train and coach startup founders to think a bit more like a scientist and have great ideas. Yes, we don't want to kill an idea, right? But every idea that shows promise, the excitement should really be around, let's go test this. Okay, but that's hard. And because it's hard, we don't do it. Or we might do it just a little bit, but we don't really make it a part of our DNA. And the reason why is because it's hard to get people to give us their time. If I'm a startup founder and I have a potential customer that I want to serve, and I go up to them and say, hey, can I have a few minutes of your time? I'm doing some product research. Maybe a couple people will say, okay, but a lot of times they're going to be like, you know what, I'm busy. Or they might schedule a meeting, but they're not going to show up. Or you might even be a little ways further down the line. You might actually have a product in market and you're trying to get your real customers' feedback. And maybe you can get them to click a button that's like, how many stars would you rate me? But a lot of times they just skip it. And so what we need to do first and foremost is to build this mechanism in this engine where we can connect with real people, we can build trust and relationships with them and get them to give us their time. And really what that comes down to is building connection and building empathy and really striving to listen to them about their problems. Okay. So the solution to all of this is really about strong customer research and product discovery. So before we even think about building a solution, before we write our first line of code, especially before we build an engineering team, what we really need to focus on is how to build a feedback loop and an engagement model where not only are potential customers willingly giving us their time, but that in fact they are reaching out to us, right? That they have a demand for this solution or demand to solve this problem, so that they are coming to us to talk to us about how can we help them. And then we co-create and collaborate on what that solution is. And every step of the way, we test and we validate. Not just do we understand the customer, not just do we understand the problem, and not just does this solution solve the problem, but everything about our business model, about our pricing, about our packaging, about our messaging. Every aspect, every key decision that we make in our business has to be validated by customers and tested in the market. Okay. So now how we do this is obviously complicated and multifaceted. And this is what I cover with my coaching clients as well as in my startup accelerator. So I can't get too much into the how here. Let's just kind of talk about what this approach looks like in practice. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'm a startup founder and I have an idea to build a product, and I've gone and I've built some mock-ups or some prototypes, or maybe even built a small solution. What I would do instead is, or what I would do is I would challenge my beliefs and assumptions. I would say, I'm taking this thing to market, and in order for this solution to work, these are the things that have to be true. A customer has to believe that this is a significant problem, and they have to believe that these existing solutions don't stack up, and they have to believe that this particular solution could potentially solve that problem, and that they would be willing to pay this price, and so on and so forth. They'd be willing to change and try something different. So whatever the beliefs or assumptions that have to be true in order for your hypothesis to be true, we have to go challenge them. We have to be our own devil's advocate. What I would do is I would go out and connect with potential customers, and I would have a very open-ended and casual discussion about their problems. And it would go something like, hey, you know what? I'm just like you. I'm a software developer, and I know how difficult it is to manage my code reviews. And I'm just making this up off the top of the head here, right? So I understand as a developer how difficult it is to manage my code reviews, and I'm trying to figure out a way to fix it. Can I brainstorm a little bit with you, or can I ask you some questions about how code reviews, are painful for you, or what are some of the challenges that you run into when you're doing code reviews? And a software developer who's experiencing that pain might be like, oh man, you're right. I do feel that pain. That is something that I experience all the time. In fact, I've tried a bunch of things and they haven't worked. I'd love to talk to you about it. Okay. You might even go a level higher. Let's say I haven't even picked a potential problem, right? Let's say we're talking about just, software development process in general. All right. You know what? I'm a software developer. I'm leading this software development team, and I'm really struggling to understand how to help my team be productive and really thrive. And I've tried a lot of different tools and I've tried a lot of things and they just haven't been working. And I'd love to just pick your brain, sort of, talk shop, developer to developer, about what are some ways to solve this problem, right? Or maybe I would like to pick your brain about how you've tried to solve this problem in the past. So notice the first thing I did there is try to relate to them, try to connect with them as a member of their in-group. Okay. So now you might not necessarily be in the in-group, and that might actually make it hard for you to gain access to these people. And that might be the first challenge you have to overcome is how do I infiltrate a network in order to get people to trust me? Now, where am I even talking to these people? Am I reaching out to them online, on LinkedIn, on social media? Am I meeting them at a meetup group or at a convention? Well, it could be any of those things, right? It could be at a coffee shop. It depends on where your market is. But the first thing you have to do is find out where these people are and become a part of their in-group, become a part of their network so that you can introduce yourself to them, have a casual conversation with them, and then lead that conversation towards, how can we just have a casual conversation about a shared problem? Okay, so let me digress a little bit. That's just an example of how I can make a connection and talk about a problem. But how do we systematize that? Well, the first thing we have to do is either you or somebody in your team is continually recruiting, right? And trying to get these people's time, whether it's, okay, we're scheduling time at the coffee shop, or we're always going to attend this meetup, or we're going to have a pipeline of people on the internet that we're going to reach out to on a regular basis and just try to get 15 minutes of their time to have a conversation about their problems. All right. Now, once you have that pipeline of meetings, of conversations coming in, you can tune what that conversation is about to be whatever the belief or assumption is that you want to challenge, right? I want to talk to you today about this particular aspect of the problem, or I want to talk to you today about these different solutions that may or may not be meeting your needs, or I want to talk to you about pricing. But first we have to build that engine. That's the very sort of scrappy, lo-fi way of doing it. But we can actually scale this up by engaging with some automation or hiring an assistant to go out and do some of this virtually, even by potentially buying ads. And there are even recruitment platforms if you're doing, customer research. There are companies and firms that can actually go out and bring participants to you, but of course that costs money. But again, by whatever means necessary, the first problem to solve in your startup is to build the engine where you are engaging with customers every single week in a systematic and repeatable way. And then every week, you just will simply have a set of assumptions or a set of questions that we're going to test and validate with whatever those conversations are, right? So it may be, hey, I've got 5 meetings that dropped onto my calendar this week. And so this is what our hypotheses are for the week that we're going to test, right? Or the experiments that we're going to run, or the feedback we're trying to gather. Once we get that engine in place, now we can start iterating towards a solution. Okay. Now, again, this is what I cover in my accelerator is how do we go from idea to problem to prototype and then take that to a solution to market. All right. This is what it takes to get to product market fit. But by creating this feedback engine, we're able to create the flywheel that drives us towards product market fit and unlocking scale. And so, there's a lot of other, people out there that have tried this. Obviously, this isn't entirely new. People do market research, people do discovery research. And so what is it that I do differently? Well, I come from a product and technology background, and I'm very focused on the agile development principles, mainly around reflection and continuous improvement. When a lot of people do something like this and they're going out and doing research and they're talking to customers, it's like a campaign. They do it once, they get some data, and they say, okay, that's it. Like, we're good to go. We're on to the next thing. The way I approach it is we are continually assessing and we're continually going over ground as the business evolves. We might have to challenge not only the assumptions of today, but even the assumptions that we have validated in the past that might have changed by now. And so it's really important to, on top of this continual feedback engine, to have these rhythms of assessment where we can identify what aspects of our business are really humming and where are our gaps. So what should we be focusing on and what should we target that validation and target that continuous improvement around. So there's a tool that I've borrowed from basically from Buddhism called the Wheel of Life. And it's the idea that we have this kind of all of these different aspects that make us healthy and thrive in our lives. And they all have to be in balance for us to truly achieve growth and happiness, right? So the same thing applies into our business. So I've created this Wheel of Life model where we look at all of the aspects of our product, our marketing, and our strategy, and to be able to assess on a regular basis where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. And then to be able to zoom in a specific area and say, okay, how are we going to test and validate this area? What's working and what isn't, and what needs to improve? And then let's plug that into that feedback engine so that we can figure out what's wrong and come up with a new solution and fix that problem. So then we can move on to the next thing. And so this engine that I've created has worked with dozens and dozens of different startups over the years and helped them to get from idea to product market fit, and then from growth to massive scale. Okay. So I hope that this framework and this model or way of thinking can help you overcome the common pitfall of if we build it, they will come. That's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for being here. If there's a challenge that you're dealing with in your tech startup that you'd like me to cover, or if you're an executive of a successful SaaS company and you'd like to be a guest on my show, or if you'd like to hear more about what I offer in the Chaos to Clarity Accelerator or my executive coaching program, reach out and connect with me at eric@fullcycleproduct.com. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.